No one spoke her name in the streets of Kasira. At dawn, she was already awake, lifting a woven basket heavy with other people's garments onto her head. By dusk, she returned with fingers wrinkled from water, knuckles raw from stone, and a silence so deep it felt like part of her skin. To the neighborhood, she was not a story, not a presence, only movement. A figure crossing the courtyard, a pair of bare feet on worn stone. The girl who washed what others soiled. She was part of the background, like desert dust carried on the wind or the distant barking of dogs at twilight. Invisible, ordinary, unremembered. Until the morning the wind shifted and hooves shattered the rhythm of the alley. It was a narrow street along the oldest wall of Kasira, where houses leaned toward one another as if sharing secrets. On the flat rooftop of a small, aging home, sheets of pale linen fluttered against a sky thick with gathering clouds. Snow, rare, almost mythical snow, had begun to fall in hesitant flakes, dissolving on contact with warm stone. She stood among the hanging cloth, her frame wrapped in turquoise fabric faded by years of washing and sun. Her hands worked without thought, pinning, smoothing, straightening. Below, a black horse slowed. Its rider did not know why he lifted his eyes. He would later try to explain it as curiosity, as distraction, as instinct, but none of those words would reach the truth. Something unseen pulled his gaze upward. Their eyes met. Time did not stop, but it stretched, thinned, widened into something fragile and endless. She reacted first, drawing a length of linen across part of her face, as she always did when a man's stare lingered too long. But her eyes remained visible. Blue, clear and startling against the desert's earth tones. They were not defiant, not inviting, they were steady. And in them he saw not admiration nor fear, but recognition, as if he had been searching for something unnamed his entire life, and it had been standing on that rooftop all along. Her name was Amara. Few knew it, fewer cared. But that day the wind carried it into destiny. Amara was 23 years old and carried responsibility like other women carried jewels, constant, visible, inescapable. Her father had died 3 winters earlier when fever spread through the southern quarter. Her mother's lungs had weakened not long after, each breath now a careful negotiation with pain. Amara had learned early that the world offered no guarantees. If she wished to eat, she worked. If she wished her mother to live, she endured. She washed garments for merchants, widows, newly married couples, wealthy families who never asked her name. She scrubbed silk beside coarse wool, rinsed perfume from collars and dust from hems. She stole nothing, she complained to no one. Honesty was rare currency in Kasira, and she possessed it. Her home stood near the red desert's edge, small and square, with an interior courtyard open to the sky. From its rooftop she watched life unfold, children chasing one another, traders bargaining, noblemen riding to the palace in garments too fine for the alleys they crossed. She never studied their faces, until the rider with the black horse. He was Talim ibn Yusuf al-Safir, heir to the governance of Kasira and the surrounding provinces. Raised in marble corridors, trained in discipline before tenderness, taught hesitation was weakness. And yet he had hesitated. The morning after their first exchange of glances, Amara told herself she had imagined it, that snow had unsettled her senses, that exhaustion had colored her thoughts. She lay beside her mother's labored breathing and insisted that nothing unusual had happened. Important men did not notice women like her. When they did, it was rarely with good intention.
She repeated that truth until it sounded hollow. The following afternoon, the hooves returned, not hurried, deliberate. They stopped before her door. 3 measured knocks struck the old wood. No one knocked like that in her quarter. Amara wiped her hands on the cloth at her waist and opened the door a narrow span. A man stood there, older, rigid in posture, dressed in dark, tailored garments that spoke of palace service. His expression held the weight of someone accustomed to obedience. "Are you the laundress who lives here?" he asked. "I am," she replied, lifting her chin. "The prince, Talim ibn Yusuf al-Safir, requests your services for the palace. He will pay 3 times your usual rate." The world narrowed again. 3 times her rate meant medicine, warm blankets, fewer nights of hunger. And yet, something inside her tightened. "Why me?" she asked calmly. "There are many laundresses nearer the palace." The man seemed faintly surprised. "The prince has heard of your reputation, honest, discreet." She held his gaze. "I accept," she said at last, "on one condition. The garments come here. I do not go to the palace." His brow creased. "That is unusual." "So am I," she replied. After a pause long enough to measure resolve, he inclined his head. "Agreed." The garments arrived at dawn. Fine fabrics, embroidered tunics, all male attire. She worked as she always had, yet her thoughts drifted to eyes the color of dark honey and to the stillness in his posture. When she finished, she folded each piece with reverence born not from status, but from discipline. The messenger did not return. Instead, Talim came. Without horse, without procession. 2 guards lingered at a distance. "The garments are ready," she said, because silence felt too vulnerable. "I know," he replied. "May I enter?" The question startled her more than his presence. No one at his standing asked permission. She stepped aside. He paused in the courtyard, taking in the worn stone, the clay pots, the simple wooden chair where her mother often rested in sunlight. There was no disdain in his expression, only attention. "It smells clean," he observed softly. "It is olive oil soap," she answered defensively. "I meant it as praise." He examined one folded tunic, nodded once. "Why did you refuse the palace?" "My mother needs me close." "What troubles her?" "Her lungs." "Has she seen a skilled physician?" "Only the one in our quarter." He removed a small leather pouch from within his robe and placed it on the stone table. "For the garments," he said, "and the labor." "It is more than agreed." "It is just." "I do not accept charity." "It is not charity." Their eyes held. She accepted the pouch without opening it. "Seek Fahim in the spice market," Talim added. "Tell him I sent you." Then he left. Her heart did not steady for hours. In the days that followed, change came quietly. The physician confirmed what hope had barely dared to whisper. Her mother's illness could be eased with proper treatment. Breathing grew less painful. Sleep came more easily. And with each basket of garments sent to and from the palace, a new thread formed between them. One morning, beneath folded cloth, she found a small leather-bound book, poetry, verses written in the ancient dialect of the desert. Her grandmother had taught her those words when she was a child, seated beneath the same rooftop sky. At the margin, written in firm script, "Do you read the desert's language, or must I teach you?" A smile found her before she could stop it. She wrote a single line in reply. "My grandmother taught me before you were born." Thus began a correspondence, hidden between linens. They wrote of childhood memories, of the weight of expectation,
of loneliness in crowded halls and dignity in humble work. The old dialect became their refuge, ancient words carrying new truths. Weeks passed. Then one note arrived different from the rest. "I wish to see you, not for garments, but for you. May I come?" She stared at the page for a long time. Finally she wrote, "Come Tuesday." He arrived on foot, dressed simply. When she opened the door, he greeted her in the desert dialect. "Good morning, Amara." Something softened in her chest. They sat facing one another beneath morning light. He spoke of palace corridors that echoed with duty, of learning to measure every word before speaking, of belonging everywhere and nowhere at once. She spoke of belonging to places that never belonged to her, of work done without applause. Hours slipped past unnoticed. Her mother eventually stepped into the courtyard. "Do you know how to make coffee?" she asked Talim. He blinked. "Then learn," she said, pointing to the small stove. He burned it that day, brewed it too strong the next. By the third visit, it was perfect. Affection grew. So did risk. The world did not forget the distance between prince and laundress. Amara knew it. One Tuesday, she spoke before he could open the poetry book. "This cannot remain half-spoken," she said. "I am not a secret refuge. I am a woman with a life. If this is only escape for you, say so now." He stood, closing the distance, but not touching her. "I choose you," he said quietly, "not as escape, as wife." Her breath caught. "Your family will resist. Then I will stand." "Prove it." "I will." He did not return the following Tuesday, nor the one after. She did not weep. Promises required action. Then came the invitation sealed in blue wax, not as laundress, as guest. The palace rose from desert stone like a mirage made permanent, columns tall, fountains shimmering against dry air. Amara entered wearing turquoise and copper bracelets from her grandmother, nothing borrowed, nothing false. Nadia, Talim's mother, received her first. "You are Amara," she said. "Yes." They walked through gardens. "Do you understand what it means to join my son? It means serving more than a household. It means carrying responsibility for many." Nadia studied her. "Most speak of privilege." "Privilege without duty fades," Amara replied. Later, Governor Yusuf faced her. "Are you afraid?" he asked. "Yes." "And yet you stand here." "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "My son does not stop without cause. If he stopped for you, I must understand why." When she left, she knew she had not been dismissed. She had been measured and heard. Talim waited outside. "Thank you," he said. "This is my life too," she answered. The announcement came weeks later. The heir of Kasira would marry a woman of the people. Reactions split like cracked earth, some hopeful, others outraged. Amara walked through both without lowering her gaze. Preparations began. She insisted her mother guide decisions, insisted desert traditions remain visible, refused excessive ornament meant to disguise origin. "I fell in love with who you are," Talim told her, "not a polished version." The wedding dawned cool and luminous. Flowers from the desert lined the courtyard. She walked beside her mother and closest friend, not in a carriage, but on her own feet. Talim waited beneath the arch. They exchanged vows, not of ease, but of steadfastness. When it ended, applause rose gentle and sincere. That evening they stood together on the palace terrace, overlooking endless sand. "Do you regret it?" he asked. She shook her head. "I recognize myself," she said. Marriage did not erase difficulty. Seasons brought drought and dispute, trade negotiations and unrest. Talim bore governance with gravity. Amara bore partnership with equal strength. She organized networks for widows, established education for girls, oversaw water projects in neglected regions. She spoke from experience, not theory. The people began to call her the Princess of Water. She accepted the name lightly. Years passed. Children were born. First a son who cried with fierce vitality, then another, quieter, observant. She taught them humility by bringing them to markets and wash basins, told them of rooftops and snow. Her mother lived long enough to hold her grandchildren, passing peacefully one morning with Amara's hand in hers. Grief came. So did gratitude. Amara never forgot the feel of stone beneath bare feet. Decades later, she returned alone to the old rooftop. The house still stood. She touched the worn surface and closed her eyes, hearing in memory the echo of hooves that had once changed everything. That night, she stood beside Talim on the palace terrace once more. The desert stretched before them, vast and eternal. "In what do you dwell?" he asked softly. "In the woman who believed she would never be seen," Amara answered. "You were always visible," he said. "The world simply had not learned to look." She rested her head against his shoulder. She thought of labor and love, of poetry hidden in linen, of courage chosen again and again. She understood at last. True love does not rescue from life. It stands within it. It chooses. It remains. And in remaining, it builds something stronger than fear. Amara no longer feared tomorrow. She was no longer invisible. She was seen. She had chosen. And she was home.